Head to Knoxville, don't be late. Baker's Live, it's gonna be great. June 5th and 6th, mark your date at Dollywood, we'll celebrate. Meet Baker and more cool friends. Live show magic that never ends. Come to Dollywood, feel the vibe. With great people there, it's gonna be a ride. Rides, fun, and meet and greet. Baker and pals, the crew's so sweet. Get ready for laughs, cheers, and thrills. Knoxville's the place, it's giving chills. Meet Baker and more cool friends. Live show magic that never ends. Come to Dollywood, feel the vibe. With great people there, it's gonna be a ride. June 5th and 6th, don't miss the fun. Meet Baker and friends, it's second to none. Baker and friends, it's second to
I put the wrong one on. Sorry. Hey, it's amateur hour. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whoever you are, what, if any, you might be. And welcome to this Karen Reed panel show where we have a mix of talent. I have no talent. Our buddy Valhalla awaits have some talent.
Very little. Very little.
To make us better and to make us smarter, we have brought on a newcomer to the scene, our first time visiting, who is really, really smart. And we have instructed her to talk to Valhalla like he's a 5-year-old and me as a 5-year-old with learning disabilities. Welcome, Video Jesus, Abby, whatever we will figure out to call you. And welcome to my channel, Valhalla's channel. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And
I'm excited for this.
You're not ready for this, or you're ready for this?
I'm excited for this. I'm excited.
Well, you're going to get more excited because...
Oh, yeah.
You thought we had the cream of the crop? No. That always rises to the top, you know that. So we are also bringing on Runkle of the Bailey, Ian.
I have no idea what you're talking about if you're talking about the cream of the crop, but...
Macho Man Randy Savage. Best promo cut ever of all time.
Love it.
You guys, wrestling fans know what I'm talking about.
Small cup of coffee and it's not a wrestling show today. That'll be next week. Wrestling on a budget. Me and Valhalla talking about the glory days of the 80s wrestling scene. Today we're going to talk about the Karen Reed case, and I have jotted down some of the things that happened this week. Because I've been quite surprised over the weekend. Federer not being granted Pro Hoc Vice because the judge determined that it would be a conflict of interest, even though isn't that for the defendant to determine if she would waive her conflicts? I think that's
not
how it goes.
entirely, because some conflicts are waivable and some aren't. So I guess that's sort of one of the questions there. Is it a waivable conflict or is it a not waivable conflict?
What would be the difference there?
Waivable is like if you're both, if you and your spouse are buying buying a house together, for instance, there's a potential conflict, but it might be waivable, and you're like, yeah, we can work together. But not waivable might be like you are representing, two people who are accused, or one person who's accused of committing a murder, and another person who is who's the first person's sort of defense, in the sense that they say, I didn't do it, that other dude did it. That might be non-waivable, because it's like, well, you can't waive that because your argument is literally the other dude, is the other dude did it, kind of thing. So it's that now, I mean, she's saying that a conflict might come up rather than one is. So that's kind of another thing there, but
That was
Yeah,
the
that's
question I had regarding all that, right? Because she claimed that she hadn't seen the sealed stuff from the federal government. And then she's saying that there may or may not be a conflict arising from the sealed stuff that she hadn't read. So is that sound?
I mean, I think her concern, and I'm trying to be as fair to her as possible here. Her concern is that if a conflict comes up later, it creates a big problem, because if a conflict does arise, then the only way to fix it is to kick everyone off the file. So
Right.
at that point, you've got a bit of a problem, because it's like, well, crap, we've got to, turf everyone off of this. And how do we do that? So I think, I don't know. I'm torn on this one, because I can sort of see it in both directions. But
That does make
I don't-
sense, though.
it's just I don't see how the conflict's going to show up, because either either the stuff that is coming out is irrelevant to both sides, or if it's relevant to the other side such that he'd want to pass the information over, then why wouldn't they just give it to them, right? So
Right. They should in
It's,
discovery anyway, right?
yeah, so it's a weird situation.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem I have with her. She's a mind reader, with some witnesses she can clearly, this is going to happen, and with other witnesses, we'll get into the
Oh, I
Russell
mean-
Crosby thing as well, where she can determine without ever hearing Crosby that, oh, he has the necessary skill, even though he doesn't have any education. But Dr. Russell had been through 3 days of Wadia to determine that a lady whose CV probably makes most people cry.
No kidding.
Yeah, she slid in there by her chinny chin chins. That seems like she's a mind reader, and as Kurt says, I stopped being surprised. All I have to do is ask whether something favors the defense or instead favors the prosecution, and I know which way Bev will likely rule. And that's a problem for a judge, in my opinion, because they should be they're not there to take sides. They're not a part of the state. That's my problem with the rulings she's making, is that she seems like she's playing favorites, and that's even if she's not, and I'm not one of those people who I don't bring up that text about whose house are we going to bury under, and again, it could just be something out there, and I don't really swing into the conspiracy stuff or try to find the killer, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to figure out, is Karen Reed guilty or innocent? I'm not here to figure out, because we'll never find the real killer with the shoddy police work done in this case. That's the big problem. But we've been watching it for 2.5 years now.
I've said repeatedly that the people who should be most pissed off about this is the people who think Karen Reed is guilty. Because if you're certain she's guilty, you should be extremely pissed at the police work. And full stop. There's just no way around that.
If you believe Karen Reed to be guilty, I agree 100%. You should be outraged with how terrible the police conducted themselves in this investigation. 100% agree with that.
And that's why I know again, we have had 2.5 years. We're all speculating. We're all pointing to the most likely culprits, and we can see things that could point in a direction. But I've been having that that mindset the entire time. I'll bring information like when Abby makes a good point in a video, or I find something on Olivia's Twitter that makes a lot of sense. I really want to dig into that one, but I try to only stay with what have we seen in documents or in court, because the rest is just air. We don't know what's right and what's wrong, and a lot of the stuff people talk about, well, you can't really produce it in court, so it's kind of waste of time spending a lot of time looking at it. In my opinion, it's just there's a lot of energy spent on solving a murder that will never be solved, in my opinion. And,
I
and
agree.
but Abby, it was a week for you as well, because I found this on Olivia's the other day. We have the Sallyport videos, and I was looking at these, and I thought, well, I'm not a smart person, but I can look at the time frame and or the time thing. It's two different colors, it's different fonts, and this one you can almost make out details, and this one you can't. It can't be
Yeah.
because it's a screenshot. They took it while it's running, of course. But you work with stuff like this.
Well,
Or
so I work with more professional video editing software, but even Equivision itself really is a pretty user-friendly interface. And the one thing that you have to remember about Equivision is that it is a security software. So this e-player that we saw pop up again with last week, we saw very different looking videos than we saw in court. So even some of the videos were brightened a lot, so was very different from what we saw before. We also saw a very clear timestamp on the Sallyport, because the Sallyport is like probably the one that I'm most interested in, because they claimed that this camera had been broken. They claimed that's why it's so degraded. And then we see this other video where we see a very clear timestamp. It's not blurry. It's a different size. It's very clear on screen. And then we also kind of see like a different in sizes of the edges of the frame. And so when we look at these videos too, it's important to remember that if these videos are played in ePlayer, which is an Equivision media player, they will only play proprietary types of files. So for example, I can't play a .mp4 in Equivision. It won't register. It only plays its own containers. So we talk about containers and codecs, which I won't get too much into because that can get a little confusing. But the fact that the defense and the prosecution both agree they don't have the proprietary files. So if they don't have the proprietary files, it begs the question, how are they playing these videos in Equivision? Does that make sense?
I think so.
So like it basically what they're saying, so it's a proprietary file. So basically I can go into Equivision, I can export out a video, but it won't play in this Equivision ePlayer unless it's a .ps, a .psx, or a .exe. So a .exe basically wraps the ePlayer. So for example, like if you're a lawyer and you don't have Equivision on your computer, an exe file has the player inside of the Equivision video file. So basically it'll just pop up and open, like kind of like any kind of program that you would use.
yeah, so like if you have like VLC,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you hit it, it'll open up in VLC. So the codec is there to read it.
Correct. So that's what the interesting thing is. So they claim they don't have these files, but yet they're playing them in Equivision, which means that they're a proprietary export container. With Equivision, you can do, hash on the file. So when you export, it's an option to do, to apply a hash value on it. But you can also export like an exe, a .psx, and a .ps, so they're not encrypted, which really doesn't change much other than the fact that like if it's not encrypted, like again, you could play it in VLC, but you still can't alter the files. So if I go into something like Premiere, which we know that they use Premiere because we saw like the Premiere and After Effects icons in even just this most recent hearing. They weren't active, but they were definitely on screen. You can't edit these proprietary files in Premiere. Like, so if I export a .ps, which is a proprietary Equivision file type, I cannot then edit the file in Premiere. So I'd have to export, because Equivision does export out MP4s and AVIs. You just can't play them back in the Equivision player. I know that's like kind of complicated, but it's important because if they're claiming they don't have the original files, then how are they playing them in Equivision?
Yeah, and how do they? That's the thing, and I don't know if they did enough of it. Let me toss this out here. We know that it's overwritten every 30 days. We have a report written 3 years after they pulled the video, but we still found one video showing the 1st of January,
January
28 days
1st.
before
Yeah.
Karen Reed. So this should have been overwritten by the time Yannetti asked to preserve all evidence. That video shouldn't exist. Why do they have a video showing that the camera was already on the fridge on the 1st of January? Because we know she was arranged at the 2nd of February, which is after the 30-day period with the rollover, because there's 31 days in January. How come they magically saved a piece of video that to me didn't show anything? It was just a guy walking through a sally port.
Now, devil's advocate on this one,
Please.
they may have looked for other cases that were pulled from that time period and just gone through other cases. So it might be that video is unrelated, that the reason why they have it is not because of any connection to Karen Reed, but only because of, only because they, it's somebody else. Maybe it was the Birchmore case. I doubt that, but
So to push back slightly, wasn't the claim though that Sallyport has never been a evidence, right? When they requested the video from the Sallyport,
they say it's not a part of the crime scene in this case, right? But that doesn't mean that Sallyport video couldn't have been relevant in some other case that got them to save it. Now this is again,
it could be Joe Johnson's car was about to come in, and that's where they clipped it from.
Sure.
Yeah. It's, and this is sort of steel manning their position. I don't know that this is true. Right. This is just as a possibility, right? So,
but it's just, and
then you have the timestamp on that video though, being before Karen Reed, would indicate to me as a layman that they should have at least had the understanding that the Sallyport then could be part of a crime scene, right? So,
they should know
it doesn't look good for the Commonwealth, I don't think.
They should know that it could be relevant because they saved part of it. Right. And that's the thing, is if you save part of this Sallyport video, then why aren't you saving all of it? Like, this is weird to me, right? They clearly knew it was connected.
It's very bizarre.
And it's bizarre too, because they say it again that the camera was defective, but nobody touched the camera. So like these manual settings, and I've always said this too, about when people kind of refer to the inversion of the recording, that you can mirror an image in Equivision. You can change the font styles. You can change the font colors. These are settings, but they're manual settings. So like you manually have to go in there and manually change it. Like they are not default. So if this timestamp was magically blue and when you saw it, it was very, you couldn't really see the time code in general. Like it was very blurry. But the one that we saw in court the other day of the export, and that shouldn't be like that either, because the time code is not really embedded in the file. So this is a text file. So that graphic should be pretty clear, like in the video itself, like we saw on Thursday with the yellow timestamp. Like it should look just like that, because it is basically it's a file that you think of it almost like a caption. You know how you have caption files?
It's like our little names down here. It's not exactly part of the video. It's just there crystal clear.
Yeah, it's an overlay.
Well, like, I think she's referring to like closed caption files where you've got like the text of what I'm saying now, and then it'll come up with timestamps to make it come up. Is that correct, or am I off base here?
Correct. Yeah, so it's basically like that. So a lot of the times with even editing programs, you can export out like a caption file, that's like separate from the video, that's not embedded in the video. So I can turn the captions off, I can turn the captions on. Think of it more of YouTube. So that blue timestamp in general was a huge red flag to me, because why is it so blurry? It shouldn't be blurry. And and I think it was more enlightening too, because again, you can just say something's edited, but you have to really see how it's been edited. So one of my theories when the initial Sally report came out and it was coming out in court is that maybe this was blurry because of the camera. So we have to remember that we are watching a video that is filmed through a broadcast camera. So you will have some, some differences there as a viewer. But again, we saw the same court TV footage. We saw, unless they mysteriously updated all of every news station in existence, mysteriously updated all of their cameras, it goes to, and even in, again, day 20, we did see some clearer time codes. So why was that one time code, that blue time code, blurry? It didn't really make sense to me. It looked, again, like somebody put a blur mask on the video. But then that, again, if you edit a file, so if I put this in Premiere, I can't re-encode it and put it in a container that's proprietary to Equivision. Like, I can't, unless I replace it, but that's a whole other thing. But that's the thing is, you can't convert it back so it will play an ePlayer. There's only one file type in Equivision that you could probably maybe overwrite some of the video stream, but even that might be kind of a stretch. So that's kind of where I came at with this week when we saw the new footage of, I think it's a fake player. It's basically like a wrapped player, like a VLC player. So just put it in VLC terms, that it's playing a video file that's probably an MP4 that just is made to look like Equivision. And I think that's the most logical workflow around it, because we know that some of the videos were changed. And even the original videos, some of the videos were brightened. How did they do that and still maintain the container? So that file type. That's kind of the real mystery. Hopefully I didn't confuse anybody there.
I think I'm tracking.
Let me just pay the bills. Big Dog is saying, throwing $20 for swear jar and alcohol replacement and hangover remedy stuff. Thanks for entertaining us, boss. Thank you, Big Dog. And yay for Runkle, not real Arizonan person here. So happy to support our neighbors from the north. Thank you again, Big Dog. And Big Dog says, Abby, not too familiar with you, so happy to learn from your stuff. Yeah, that's the beauty of the internet. We can get to learn from smarter people. You can't learn from Valhalla and I. We're the guys who said, "Oh yeah, let's sign up for military duty." How fun could that be? Valhalla goats rule. Just saying.
I agree.
And Puddletown been a member for 11 months. I think I'm turning Danish. I really think so. We didn't even have any Danish while we were here. The ladies didn't want it. And thank you, Big Dog, for 5 gifted memberships, and retired detective file for becoming a member. Chloe's Incisor saying, watching from windy southern Alberta, Canada.
Oh, so close to me then.
Yeah.
And Big Dog, I'm not going to ask the question, but thank you for it. I'm not going to ask them what got us into this trial, because I think we'll be here for even longer then. But thank you for it. And Teresa says, can Bev remove cameras from the courtroom? She could.
I think it would cause a bit of an outrage at this point, but she could, yeah.
Yeah, the press is there on her discretion, I believe. If she feels it's if it's interfering with the trial, but I don't see how she could claim it, because we haven't really have any. It's not like other cases where we heard, oh, that guy down there who used a flashlight. Oh, that was actually a woman who used a flashlight. No photography with flashlights in the courtroom. That's a bit stupid. But she can make rules for the press. We had it in the Carly, not the Carly Gregg case, and another case where every time they went to sidebar, they closed the audio.
I mean, that's very common that they won't play the audio during the sidebars.
Yeah, and then they pointed the camera up, so you're sitting there thinking, are they on a break? Are they just discussing? It's a little annoying. At least keep the camera on so we know when the sidebar is done. Is there no rules on what evidence comes in? Just because I said so stuff from Brennan is evidence.
Pretty much.
It's not. I mean, unless it's an affidavit, it's not evidence at this stage. It's just argument.
Yeah.
So,
And Bev will be the one who will determine if it's evidence. Because she can say, yeah, I'll allow it. They should have known that footage was relevant from day one because it's almost the entire case. Yeah, but if that evidence showed something they didn't want it to show, then why take pictures of it until the evidence looked like they wanted it to look?
Well, too, I mean, and we're talking about the photos. I think there was a filing, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the timestamps on the photos didn't match. And I think there was another thing with the cell phone data with the PDF that wasn't hash verified. And I think it was at one point in the trial, Brennan said XMP is a program and so is Magic. Just to let everybody know, it's not true. XMP is a file, and XMP Magic is actually a program. And the funny thing about this program, it's actually a program that lets you alter the metadata of any, you know, if it's a PDF, if it's an image, you can use XMP Magic, which is actually a program. You can Google it and download it. You can basically tamper with the metadata, and that's what it's typically used for.
But it will still leave a cookie trail, right? You'll still be able to see when it's altered the metadata.
no,
Or would
that's
you
what metadata altering is about.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be able to see that because that's what when we watched the download
Metadata, like, it's been long able to be edited. The thing is just that most people don't. But you know, even if you go back to like Metasploit and so forth, there's stuff like timestamp and so forth allows for altering of metadata. It's just highly suspicious if you also have those things on a police computer or a prosecution computer, because why would you need to alter metadata?
And the thing too is that you can tell. I mean, so again, these programs really don't leave a footprint behind typically, but there is kind of some footprints, and this is why it's really important for them to get like a media expert or like somebody that's very skilled in metadata, because some of these programs will restructure the metadata in the actual like metadata container, or I call it just like the container, like an XML. XML. So there's XML and there's what we call like an EXIF. So that's basically more of the surface data. And sometimes these programs will restructure it. That's not native. So if you open it up in something like Phil Harvey's EXIF tool, you can see the difference between that's why it's always good to have test images and test video. Again, they destroyed the Sallyport camera, so we'll never have the test camera. I'm pretty sure I bought the right model, but we don't know exactly what the camera was that shot it. So we can't really test against it. But if something like a camera, like a photography camera, that's probably why their expert is asking for the type of camera that was shot with the photos, just so he can compare, okay, like this is what the make and model metadata structure should look like, and this is what it does look like. So that's where you can leave a little bit of a footprint behind, but that might not always be the case type of thing. Does that make sense?
I thought it would be, well, if you have it like if you get like 5 files, I took a lot of pictures this weekend. Wouldn't it be the metadata be sequential? So, or is it just a random text string?
It should be pretty sequential. So, I mean, like if I have a Canon and I have, again, like maybe it's like the date added, date modified, it could be make and model, Canon 5D, ISO, you know, like their standard of way it's, you know, natively. So if you just take a test image, sometimes it will compile how it's supposed to. But sometimes with these metadata editing programs, it will reorganize it. So maybe the ISO is above the date created and the date modified instead of it being below. That can happen. So that's why it's kind of important to know exactly what kind of camera this was shot at, because that way, you can kind of test against the image. And then you can also look at the actual file structure and say, oh, this looks off. That's not always reliable, but I mean, again, if you have a basic manufacturer model, usually it's, you know, you can kind of
because when you see it in see the extractions in Celebrite, it'll write that iPhone blah blah. So they had that, so you know, okay, it's an iPhone used. But I know who uses Celebrite.
And you can also use that's the thing too. So when we talk about metadata photos, And, even PDFs, anything of like different photo, I would say like photo extensions. So like PNG, JPEG, all of, even a TIFF file, like those are easier to edit the metadata because again, we're just talking about a still frame. So the interesting part about video is that there is always metadata in video because there is the encoding and decoding processing information. So in that XML, a lot of the times you'll see the dates the frames were created. So if it could be the original capture. So if it was the original capture, it'd be 129 in the creation frame state. But again, if it was, edited or exported, sometimes you'll even see the editing program. So if you go far enough into the metadata, you can see, okay, this was edited on Premiere, or this had, HDR gain on it, which isn't natural for this file. So there's different field pointers in video that can tell you, it might not be exact of like, again, what again, like an original capture would show. But if, you can kind of tell some of the metadata in there if it's been changed, just even if it's been moved. So that's kind of what they were talking about, where they copy and pasted. So they copied or dragged and dropped, I would say, onto another hard drive. That's going to change some of the data in the actual file itself, whether it was a tampered file or an original file. It's going to change the moment that you drag and drop it to another hard drive or a USB. So USB hard drive, same thing. Well, not really, but same thing, because you're moving it to another location. So that's going to change some of the data, which is why their expert said, sometimes data can get lost that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you're moving it between two, and because it's not like you're taking a clear image because you're writing it on another media, and that it's not the same type of hard disk maybe or thumbnail, and you will need to know every part of the chain because everything will color the picture a little bit different in the background. Monk, do you know metadata is how they caught that serial unaliving cats in Toronto? Do you know anything about that one?
I know what case they're talking about. It was a weirdo up in Canada that was going back and forth between Canada and Europe. I think they ended up catching him in Germany. But the internet sleuths went to town on him and caught him because he was messing with cats. There was a thing on Netflix called "Don't F with Cats." It was a good documentary.
It was a good, and they used a lot of different metadata just to find them, because again, sometimes even with video, like photos definitely have. So if you've ever gone on like a live photo or you take a photo, and even with the newer iPhones with some of the more iPhone proprietary codecs, it will put in GPS data, but usually I would say video files really don't typically contain GPS data, but photos typically do. So, I mean, you can have like the author, and that's why, again, photos are easier to tamper with and get away with than video, because video you can tamper with maybe some of the files, like the surface files of, maybe the creation date or the modification date, but you really can't easily mess with the processing data or like the pointer files, because once you mess with the pointer files, you can corrupt the file. So you can change the metadata enough where if you bring it into another player, it just won't recognize it. So that's why it's very tricky to go deeper into the metadata and change video metadata than it is to change an image, like an image's metadata.
And Auto Doctor says, if she's convicted, how long is minimum time to get appeals court? That depends on when there's room, and it takes a long time to file an appeal. It's
years.
It's not something you'll start next Tuesday.
Well, I mean, they'll start right away, but it'll be a process.
Yeah, it'll be a long process.
So they have to give notice of appeal. They have to provide, the details for their appeal. The other side gets to respond. It's a whole thing.
Yeah,
and the entire time. Go ahead.
Go.
The entire time, Karen, by the way, would be sitting in prison.
Yeah.
Unless she gets bail pending, but I don't think that's likely. Sometimes
I don't either.
Yeah. Not on charges like this. If she's convicted, they're going to keep her in a cell in the meantime.
Yeah, I covered the Karen Tyler case, which actually is mentioned in the habeas, and she got convicted 2 years ago, and she just filed for appeal now. So It's a very lengthy process. And again, the good old rule, appeals are for losers, so you don't want an appeal, because that means you have lost a trial before that.
Yeah.
And MLS says, thank you, Valhalla, for putting this great panel together. Yes, and letting me co-stream it, Valhalla. You are such
You're
a
very
nice
welcome.
person.
You're very welcome.
And Jane Doe, I did read it before, but thank you for sending a super chat. Please put the red question marks. I'll try and pull up as much as possible. TCP, that's a blast from the 80s. Thank you, no mention. And Chloe's Incisor says, why was one of the new sample videos have the timestamp at the bottom and another one with the timestamp at the top? No tampering, lol. But that's the obvious things that because if you don't want to have people claim you F up stuff, and we're not that blind that we trust that every police officer is a good guy, and all lawyers, of course, present company excluded, all lawyers knows a little bit. They can maybe sneak a little thing in here and there, but don't do it as obviously as they do with the timestamps. And I would love to hear an explanation, but the problem is Bev will just accept it. So yeah, that's probably, it's kind of, she probably remembers, you remember the screensavers that just moved around, and she thinks, yeah, it's probably just a computer turning over timestamps, placement, fonts, size. It's nothing.
And that's why it's important to know exactly what file type that they're using to play, again, in Equivision. Because if they're playing a non-proprietary file, which they claim they don't have, in proprietary player, it's magic. It's literally pure magic.
I think that was probably the biggest cell phone, right? Is Brennan claiming that absolutely no editing had taken place and then showing blatantly to the world different versions of videos where editing had clearly taken place.
And then using XMP magic in the same sentence. Like, that's actually like a metadata editing software.
Can Brennan, Special Pro Sector, get into trouble for lying so much in court? Only admits when caught out. Runkle, you've been in the situation.
I mean, he's going to be bulletproof in that courtroom.
Yeah, it's the same. Everyone's saying, why isn't Jen McCabe being indicted for perjury? Because she's lying for the right person. She's lying for the prosecutor.
They have some issue on timing with Jackson, and she's like trembling, and she's like, I am very concerned, and you guys are gonna. And then Brennan is caught like straight up BSing about like, oh yeah, this is on court TV, and it's like, no, well, sure, it's court footage, and you didn't check that before you went and told the court, and she's like, oh, no big deal, yeah. So at this point, I kind of feel like Brennan could pull out a golf club and just like, smack Jackson in the face, and she'd be like, oh, I'm sure he just slipped, like, whoops, what a unfortunate accident from from Brennan there. So
well, it'd be one thing if it was just one mistake, right? But literally every time Brennan takes the stand, we're getting one of these. He's claiming that he got information from the federal government when in fact it was from the defense. It's repetitive, and she's not going to do anything, She's not going to do anything.
Yeah, and I think that's the big problem. A lot of people are sitting here and saying, but in a normal courtroom, this isn't a normal courtroom.
No, this is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, y'all.
Yeah. And that's the problem, because we are also, that's why we yell about it, because normally we didn't sit and do a panel show on the Carly Gregg case, even though that's quite a horrible case. For those of you who don't know it, a young girl pew-pewing her mom in the face almost on camera. You see her seconds before you hear everything, and she was 14 at the time, which is a very interesting case and you could talk about. But this case, it's because everything is not normal. I think that's the biggest problem with this case, because, and like one of my mods said today, when even lawyer starts yelling, something's up.
And you also have like 9 videos. I think it's 9 videos total where it's just mysteriously cuts out. It's almost too convenient. You have mysterious time code that jumps forward, it jumps backwards. and it all conveniently at the same time just misses Karen Reed's taillight, or it shows Karen Reed's taillight and it's just not good. Like that's really where we're at with it. Just seems very convenient. I've never seen
Y-
video files act like that. 9,
Yeah,
not
you did
1, but 9.
you did an analysis of video skipping. Was it milliseconds or seconds?
It was seconds. Yeah. So that was the most recent one. So that was when the tow truck came in from the exterior. You can see, because that actually is a pretty clear time code. It skips forward. I think there's one part of it that it skips forward about, I think it's 19 seconds. It skips forward. So it's like it's from one mark and then it goes to like the 25, the 26 marker, and then it skips back to 25 and for a whole second, and then it jumps forward. Like time code doesn't function like that. Because again, we're talking about like an exterior file. Most of the time it's like a caption file, or if it is embedded in the video, I've never seen anything like that ever happen. Like time code doesn't skip like that.
No,
It's a pretty simple program for a time code, right? Like it's not like there's a whole lot going on.
It's a very simple program. So when we say these things are very advanced, I mean, the containers, again, when we're talking about the proprietary containers, sure, those are really complicated because you can't really play those, again, like in a typical third-party software. And you can only play them in Equivision. But if we're talking about something like, like an MP4, or an AVI or MOV, so these are file types that Equivision will export. It won't play it back like in its ePlayer, but you can certainly export them. The only one file you can export a caption from like an MP4 and put that into an editing software, and it will play in VLC. I think it will also play in, I don't know if it will play in Windows. There's a couple of different types that it will play in, but that's what I mean when we're talking about time code, is that time code doesn't skip like that, nor does footage. When we saw the Sally port, because I bought the camera, the last camera that I think. So I looked at the Town of Canton website of the last camera that they purchased in 2018. It was their 3045V. Because again, when we say something's edited, it's really just saying it's edited. Proving it's edited is a whole different story. So I bought the camera. I played with a lot of the settings on the camera. So I tested it in low lighting. I tested it in overexposure lighting. I also tested the motion activation, the different perimeters, but I really just relied on the default settings, because we have to imagine too, some of these people probably are just going to have it on default, which it kind of, to me, looked like it was on the default settings. So the cameras really don't function like that as far as, cutting on active motion, the picture itself, the distance to the camera. So like the closer you are to the camera, the more clear the image is going to be, the further away from the camera, the like the blurrier, your face is going to be. Yeah. And we saw very unnatural, again, like kind of like that depth of field with that camera. So that's why I honestly think that it was edited for those reasons. And then we also have like those ghosting apparatuses. So that is actually signifies almost a cut, right? Because if we talk about video, and this type of camera records an H.264 codec. So this is what we call like a long form, could be long form group of pictures. So we talk about different frames. So basically this camera will take a full frame. So just think of this almost like a model headshot where everything is super clear. This frame basically predicts the frames that go ahead of it. So when you cut on something that's like almost a predictive frame, so it's guessing what the next frame is going to be, often when you do this, you can get some ghosting artifacts, because it's what we call temporal artifact, artifact compression. And that's basically where you see that kind of like the comet trail. So when you cut on one of those motion frames, that's where you get the ghosting image. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you have the picture, and then the computer or the AI thinks you will have this picture will show the person here. But if you make the cut in between it and this person haven't moved there, you'll still have the computer trying to move the person over there, so you get the ghost.
Yeah.
Because it's where the space somewhere between these two have been going, but the computer still wanted to put the person here. So it's it's hard to That's why we, again, talk to us like we're 5 and stupid, because we are one of those
So that's
things.
why I'm just trying to put it in more layman's terms, and that's how you can really signify a cut versus like a cut in like a motion activation. Because again, you're really not going to see cuts on motion. So if it's recording when the motion starts and there's still movement in that frame, because again, we don't really have the file, we don't know what those settings were. But even when I tested the camera with the motion activation, so I tested the sensitivity of it. So I did like highly sensitive and lower sensitive. And even at the 5, 10, 15 feet, because I have a pretty large living room, my cats would set it off. And it wasn't, even before the perimeter that I set. And I used tape on the floor to make sure, like, okay, like, when is the camera being set off? Is it being set off before the camera, before the cat enters, like the tape that I measured out as like 10 feet? Or is it, just like clicking on right then? And no, I mean, even at that point, it's still pretty sensitive, even at lower sensitivity settings. And it will, I think, the 5 feet, 10 feet away, it will still go off, and it will record for a fairly long time too.
Yeah, I've been away all weekend in Copenhagen, and I get these notifications every time my neighbor passed by the door. Because, and this is the cheapest surveillance camera you can have. They are actually pretty okay. I can clearly see it's my neighbor walking past my door. And this is a 240 Danish kroner. So that's like, I don't know.
$7.
No, it's 40 bucks, $40 or something like that. And
even my Xfinity
camera.
My Xfinity camera is like, I think everybody kind of can relate to Xfinity because that's like a local provider around Massachusetts. My Xfinity camera will pick up, and I have that thing set on low because it's on a fire escape. I have neighbors walking in and out all the time. I have a very specific motion perimeter that I set with that, and it's on very low sensitivity, and it still goes off with like a raccoon on the fence. Like that's where I mean, like some of these, even like the prosumer type, and this is not a professional product, this is a prosumer product. It still is very sensitive. So that's where we kind of have to say, is this motion activated? No. And even if it was motion activated, it's not going to cut together clips like that. You would see in the middle like a black frame saying no camera. It's not just going to switch on in a timeline.
Well, and even if it's motion activated, the thing they're missing is an entire vehicle with, being brought in. It's like, how much motion do you need?
Right.
It's like motion activated, but it fails to capture the moment when the most things are moving.
And the fastest thing moving in the frame too. So, and that's where I came at it from. So we see the car pull into the garage, and arguably that's the fastest thing in that scene. So we have people walking around, but the car pulling is probably at the highest speed. Yet we get no jumps, right? It's people are walking around. We get no jumps or, like artifacts of just maybe it's because again, you have to think about all the other variables. So what if it was a bad internet connection, right? And it was, a bad internet connection, maybe it dropped out. You would see more of those type of artifacts. And again, you would have more of that black screen, but you don't really see that in the frame. It seems to be, the car comes in, there's no jumps, there's no skips yet. When the guy gets out of the car, the video cuts. When somebody's going behind the taillight, the video cuts. It cuts at very convenient times where there's very active motion, and the jumping or the jarringness of it should be there when the vehicle is coming in, just based on, again, like frame rate and GOP.
Some more. Andrea and brother counsel were just saying there's structural error with Bev's latest on Crosby. So would an appeal be faster in that case? Well, an appeal would still have to happen after a trial. They could probably appeal the decision beforehand, but I don't know if they want to go to trial because, like Alessi's binder says, will Cross of Crosby be more or less of a massacre than Trooper Paul with AJ? When we heard it the other day, I said I want him in. Imagine him, because his thesis is you can't match moldings of a dog's teeth with injuries. And he's now going to sit in court and testify he did moldings and matched them with dog teeth, and it's not the same. So AJ should be chomping at the bits to let him in and kick him down from the stand. But I'm just...
There's a little more to that, though, right? Because she made the claim already that nobody was allowed to opine, or the ruling rather, not the claim, that nobody was allowed to opine on the injuries if they weren't a medical doctor. And she did that for Dr. Russell. But now,
No, for
The dog-
not Dr. Wolf, the other Arca guy.
okay,
That's
What did I
where
say?
she did it the last time. But she did it for both of them. If they're not medical professionals, which Dr. Russell is, they're not allowed to opine. But
But now
Runkle,
she's letting the dog trainer basically get away with it, right?
Yep.
She's
Oh, yeah.
allowing.
Runkle, wouldn't you say yes, please,
To which?
to having an expert who's going to testify about something that's so? I did basic googling, and it shows that forensic odontology in humans it's like your favorite subject, tool marking. It's absolutely
it's not
nothing.
good. I mean,
And-
I don't see why she's allowing forensic odontology from a guy who's not a forensic odontologist. It's this is bizarre to me, but that's where we are. So
And so actually another question to follow up with that. So didn't they claim that they found Chloe? Like they found Chloe and this is like the original Chloe?
Yeah, no proof of that whatsoever. We just have to take
Well,
Brennan's
they
word
said they
that
could
it's
the
Chloe.
defense was allowed to go there and meet Chloe and pet her and say she's a good girl. Because
Why would you do that?
that's what
You did.
Brennan says, and I trust Brennan 100%.
Shut
well,
up.
the thing is what does that matter if they're allowed to go pet this dog? The question is, what is the chain of custody on this dog? Are they going to bring in everybody who's ever dealt with this dog? Are they going to bring in like veterinary records? Are they going to like, is Chloe microchipped? Is Chloe like, what's the deal on this? But like, it is for Crosby to get in, she had to straight up rule against herself.
Yeah.
Because previously she'd said the only people who could testify as to injury causation in Massachusetts, according to her, are medical doctors. Okay, fine, that's your ruling. Well, now you've ruled the opposite. So, the rules don't apply equally here. It's messed up.
No, and that's what both Rianne and Jane Doe goes with. Have you seen BS like this before? And the injustice
no, it
is
does
really
get to
hurting
me.
me.
I'm finding this one to be extremely depressing to cover at this point because, I mean, there's a very real possibility at this stage that Karen Reed gets convicted, and it's because she, it seems like the scale is pre-tilted that way. So, I mean, prepare yourselves for that possibility. But when you see, Judge Canone ruling, you have to be a medical professional on one side and you can't be a medical professional on the other, or you don't have to be on the other. I'm like, really? Like, and I see somebody saying new trial, she's going to say. Well, it's a new trial, but the law didn't change. Like, it's still the same law. So unless there's something I missed where there was like a new thing passed, but I don't think that's the case. So this is a little bit bizarre to me. So
yeah, and professionally, I think that's what we see with the profession. That's what we see with all the YouTube lawyers. They're getting frustrated because it's your job, it's your profession. You chose to become this because you wanted to work with this. And now she's just throwing everything out, saying, "Yeah, I don't care. Chain of custody. That's what no, we don't need it. I'll rule A one day, and I'll turn around doing B the next day. I will admonish the defense for sharing grand jury information that they didn't really share by putting the grand jury stuff in my ruling that no one had seen before." So it must be so frustrating because I'm a stupid baker. I'm a grifter. I do this because I like doing YouTube.
The thing is we believe in the system and we know it's not perfect. But when you see something going this badly off the rails, you're a baker. Imagine you walked into a local bakery because they're like, "Hey, we want to, we want to partner with you. And you were like, okay, but I want to see how you do stuff before I put, my name with your product. And you walk in and you see they're like, well, flour's expensive. So if we just mix in like 10% chalk dust, the customers rarely can tell the difference. You'd be like, what? And they're like, yeah, and it's just a small roach problem. They hardly ever get into the buns. And you'd be horrified, right? And that's kind of what I'm looking at, is going, this is not how things should be. And this kind of, so yeah, don't ask what the raisins are. They're not raisins.
No, but we actually
pretty much like how I feel about the video in this case. It's basically
that's
like exactly what you said.
and that's the problem, because again, I've been doing this for 2.5 years, and I'm just a YouTuber, but I just feel secondhand embarrassment, because I'm sitting here trying to tell people who show up, and well, Bev, she's the one who can determine if chain of custody, but there's blatantly nothing. And I watched the Karen Rintala case where they brought evidence back to the crime scene to dry it out on butcher's paper at the crime scene. That's so stupid. And the lead investigator was fired in that case. Guess what? It's in Massachusetts. Now I'm not surprised anymore. It's the case where they had a paint drying expert testify how long it took for paint to dry, which overturned her conviction. I'm just thinking it's a Massachusetts thing. Maybe
I think
we
it is
shouldn't.
Master's thing.
It's so horrible to sit here and watch, and I would feel ashamed if I was practicing up there, that this is the system, and
well, we're seeing it with every aspect of this case too, specifically, right? Abby, you're saying the video, you feel that way about the video, the same as Runkle's feeling about the law procedure, even the information the Commonwealth is using as evidence, right? Like the Cellbrite data apparently is no longer relevant. Like, this is inaccurate. We've convicted how many thousands of people across the country that are still currently sitting in prison cells off of Cellbrite. It's what?
Millions around the world has been.
Oh, probably.
We use it in almost every case. I'm a layman in. That's and it's
GPS
it's the gold standard
information. It's just every aspect of the evidence in this case is the same nonsense. It's crazy.
I like to call it like the Magic Canton Wizard of Oz. Only Oz. It only happens in Oz, and Oz is Massachusetts. Oz is Canton, and it just seems to be a very patterned thing. Like, this isn't the first time that it's happened.
No, and as I always say, if you don't think about it, it makes sense. And it seems to be the way they do. Who has authority over Bev and can look into all of her bias? She needs fired. I don't know how she's the queen of the courtroom.
Nothing's gonna happen to Bev.
Yeah. And that's the sad thing. Again, like everyone's saying, well, there's clear perjury. Higgins is lying up, and it doesn't matter. He's lying for the right team. As long as you're lying and the prosecutor can use it, you're golden. If it was someone for the other side that they had in a little bit of a lie, yeah, maybe they would bring perjury charges. Perjury charges is less common than people think, because it's
really
hard
to prove perjury.
I've only seen it in one case, and that's the Adam Montgomery case, where they used it to force his then wife to testify about what happened to his daughter. They threatened her with 14 years in prison for perjury, gave her 3.5, and she participated in unaliving a 5-year-old. Gotta love deals made in prison. I'm still waiting for the proctologist to take the stand and explain butt dialing. Thank you, Puddletown. I need a proctologist as well. The limp of butt
dialing happening.
Some pretty nimble butt cheeks over there.
Yeah. Unless he's the expert.
They've had more butt dials apparently in Canton in this week than I've had in my entire life.
Right.
It's
And I could see if there was maybe 1 or 2, 3 things, maybe even 4, 6 max that just didn't really make sense. And I'm not a YouTuber. I'm literally just like in video. I don't do this professionally, and I'm not a lawyer. I've never really dove in up to this point into true crime. So just as a viewer, as a normal person, I saw this and I was like, it's not just one or 6 things that are just don't make sense. It's like a plethora of things. Everything in this case, there's something wrong with it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
WW says Alessi is the expert guy, so Alessi would be crossing Crosby. I really like Alessi. I like his style. I like his.
Alessi is amazing.
Yeah, I like
He's
him a
really
lot.
good.
Oh, I don't know how you are with that. Do you mind commenting on the team Runkle, or are you like brother counsel were like, I don't like to talk about other lawyers, and I can totally understand why. But I think they needed an expert.
They're a good team, but Alessi is very much he's very much a good addition to the team. I really like what I've seen from him. He's
a
careful.
boss.
He's really, and there's various moments where if you watch Alessi, he's able to sort of show that he's got a degree of skill that's kind of a rare thing. Like the moment when Judge Canone is looking at the wrong sheet and he's like, I can work off that one. That's fine. That I'm like, oh, that's actually really hard, because that means that he's not just going from like, I've got a plan. He's just going from, I know what I'm going to talk about and I know everything inside and out. So,
He seems pretty methodical.
He's very careful. He's very planned and practiced. I mean, at this point, Alessi is my favorite on the team. So,
Miss Little, I didn't like her the first go around because I felt, and this is purely subjective, her voice didn't really carry confidence, and when I'm a visual, I'm an audio learner, so when I heard her a little bit shaky, I felt you're not, I don't believe you. And now the last time, I think it really helped her that she got Alessi on, because she's also the decent. I loved it when Bev was, I can just ask Miss Little. Yeah, I got it. And then when she asked
Right.
McLaughlin, she was also, yeah, I got it, Your Honor. Don't worry. She's grown a lot on me this time around as well. I think
Little is a good lawyer. We don't see as much of her, so it's hard to, it's hard to make full conclusions about her. So yeah.
I will
too,
say
like being on camera and stuff must be nerve-wracking.
Sure. I would say that Miss Little has definitely improved anything that I thought could have been portrayed negatively, right? Like the shaky voice in the beginning. She ain't shaky no more. I don't know if they pissed her off or she just got her feet under her, but she's all over it lately.
It might just be more experience in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's maybe again it's just because you want to hate Bev. I just felt like she treated her like a paralegal. Miss Little can get this for me. Miss Little can get. It was like she's a lawyer.
She's a partner in the firm.
Yeah. They have to be careful. The jury sees that there's a mold of Chloe's teeth, and they might believe that expert over another that doesn't. Jury members don't necessarily know better, unfortunately. Stacey, I was talking with the girls this morning in Copenhagen. I said, that's exactly my problem with allowing him in. Because a lot of people are visual learners, and they're not allowed to take notes in Bev's courtroom. So they will just... But remember, he showed us the jaw of the dog, and it didn't line up with the picture. So it must be right. And we know that the things that the jury homed in on in the first trial is things that all of us would sit and say, why the hell did you discuss that in the jury room? Did Aiden pay for the ARCA guys? So we don't trust them.
Did anybody catch that interview that he's referencing there with Turtle Boy and the juror Ronnie?
I think most people have probably seen it.
I was, first of all, thank you, Ronnie, for coming forward and speaking. That was brave and needed, I think. Second, I have never been so disappointed in our legal system or my country for that reason. I thought that what they were talking about in the jury room was absolutely mind-numbingly off base.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's when people are saying, "Oh, we like your professional jury system." No, we're not professionals, but we just get a lot of cases under our belt because we are doing it for 4 years. So we kind of learn it. But I've sat in the courtroom with people where I'm thinking, why are we talking about this? We had a case with someone who sold some Colombian fun powder, and she didn't want to convict because she used to date a junkie. But we're not here to make the law. We are here to exact the law. That's our job. But you have to. So if you're just 12 randos pulled in from the street, how would you know what to look for? That's why I like our system where I'm sitting in the room with the judge and we can say, but because he'll read the law to us and says, this is the element of the law that they must prove. So, and we don't get that 2.5-hour speech where everyone is falling asleep and, oh, you can go back and read it. No, let's go back and talk about Chloe. And Francis' mom said, if it's Chloe, she's years older, her teeth are not the same, she could miss some. Yeah, that's the big problem with that.
Well, how do we even know it's Chloe too? Like, that's my thing. They have to prove it was Chloe because I mean, it could just be any random German Shepherd. How do we know for a fact?
How did they find her? Because I met a woman halfway to Vermont on a rest stop, and they were ordered to produce her during the first trial, but they found her for the second trial. Thank you.
And apparently, he said they've had her the whole time, right? Well, we knew where Chloe was the whole time. Then why didn't you produce her when you were supposed to in the first trial?
They were ordered by Bev, but that's another thing. Bev is making all of these orders to the defense. She ordered Lally to produce the DNA test, the laboratory at 3 different hearings, and he always claimed they will be done in 2 weeks. And then the defense came forward and said, we have an email. He never, ever responded to us. And that's a year later. And she's just, yeah, well, you got it now. Case hasn't started. And
that's like really saying too, like I have a black cat, you know, and like if I, for example, like if I lost my black cat, my cat wasn't chipped, I go to an animal shelter, there's probably like at least 100 black cats that could look like my cat. I mean, I would know my cat because I love my cat, but the person might know it. But again, how do you really prove that it's the actual animal? It could just look like Chloe. So that's where I think that you have to prove whether it's a microchip, a vet record, maybe the dog had blood tests before and can prove it through a blood test. But even in order just to say that dog is Chloe, I think there has to be some kind of proof. And I didn't see any. And Runkle, let me know if you think I'm wrong on that.
I mean, we'll have to see that later because they're going to have to, they're going to have to get to that. But I mean, are they going to bring in like a whole chain of custody, like who gave the dog to who, and how do we know? Because that's going to be a whole question there. So,
yeah, and again, it's the chain of custody that's just missing everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
Literally.
Edward says, watching Alessi snap his head around when Jackson said something concerning Commonwealth didn't do something wrong intentionally. Then AJ corrected on rebuttal. Yeah, I think they AJ is the talker, and Alessi and Miss Little are the we can tell you what page everything is on, and we go back and kind of like Dr. Russell. I'll bet you she read that book the other guy wrote. Because I think she took it at the front when he just tossed it on the table and said, have you read this book?
Oh, I'm sure.
He's such a douche canoe.
I'll second that.
Does Abby feel it's basically a sexist trial?
Yeah, I do, but just by my opinion. I think they just wanted to pin it on the girl. And they've gone lengths to do it. That's what I personally think. But again, I can only really speak about video. That's my only expertise. But it just appears like, again, we have all this different evidence of like all these different videos that just, they're mysterious. There's something wrong with every single one of those videos. There's something wrong with every single piece of evidence, including stuff that's not even my expertise, like the Celebrate and other factors, even the photos. So that's where I come at it. It's like, it just seems like they're really trying to make a very large effort to convict Karen Reed. Like that's how I feel, but let me know your opinions.
I'm not sure if it's sexist based or if it was just she was the convenient one in the situation.
Just convenient.
Yeah,
but
I don't do the let's speculate, but as we talked this morning, and someone said, well, they probably dumped him out there and hoped that, like, the plow would, because the injury to the head and the puke, you can say, well, he was inside, he fell, and then he said, I'm walking home, F all of you. He was drunk as hell, and then, yeah, we didn't see him. And then he's sadly found out there. And it didn't happen, so they had to think on their feet. That could be why, well, she has a cracked tail light. Yes, but let's do something. But I don't know if that's a good explanation either. But
I think it was a little bit of both. You have Proctor, which again, some of his comments were pretty inappropriate. But
Proctor is a sexist. I'll agree with that, but I'm not sure that you can chalk all the stupidity up to.
No, I think it was convenient. I think there's a lot of different reasons. I think it was convenient too, obviously.
Yeah. Don't misunderstand me. I absolutely believe 90% of the people involved are extremely sexist and ridiculous, but I'm not sure how much that was the driving force. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Lorkong says, if the state theory is correct, why is there no damage to the rear windshield wiper, mailboxes?
I mean, the thing is that their theory, just at the impact and all of that, just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense to physics.
Yeah, physics.
Do you think they should try and get the demonstratives in from the defense this time?
I mean, I don't know what demonstratives exist because, again, like the stuff that was done by the ARCA guys was sort of, a different sort of thing there. But I don't know if I don't think she'd allow the defense to get in a demonstrative.
No, I think she ruled against it the last time. I'm more like his height compared to the car or something like that to show that theory about him reaching out his arm would line up with it. But I'm a visual guy, so I really I was missing some demonstratives, but Bev was also hamstringing on it. So I like a demonstrative. I have to admit. Carrying my pigeon business and wearing Canton TL Ferry shirt. Runkle. Thank you, Baker Video G's, and Ian and Valhalla awaits for. Is it a shirt you what?
Those are shirts off of my merch store. I've got the pigeon business, and also here. Let me see if I can pull them up here. I got to see if I can. If it'll actually pull up, because I've been having trouble accessing my own Zazzle store. But so here we go. Let me just try to present here. Give me a second. I'm just trying to fight with my computer. There we go. So you'll have to pull it up there if you want.
On
Wrong one.
Yeah, I know it's the wrong one.
That's a different one.
I'm adding it to stage-wise. Oh, I need to stop this screen, and then I have to
try to tell him.
Well,
so we've got Blessed by the Canton Taillight Fairy.
Love that.
That's good.
Let's see, what else have we got on the shirt designs there? We've got the Canton Brainworm.
I like that.
Outstanding.
And then there's the what is it? Pigeon business. Pigeon business is kind of a reference to there's this case, this lawyer Janet Braun. She I basically made the comment that sometimes it can be really hard to tell like clever strategy from just stupid moves, because what is it, if you've got here, I'm being told I'm a little quiet, I'll try to spice it up a bit. If you've got a lawyer who's doing something that you just, where you look at it and you're like, I don't know what you're doing, it's kind of a moment in law where you have to be like, we have to figure all this out, because either they're doing something stupid, which, pigeon business, they're just kind of like walking around and pooping all over the chessboard, or they've got some brilliant strategy that you don't know. And so you have to figure out, whether this is just pigeon business or whether this is some sort of clever move. And usually it's just going to be pigeon business, but you have to actually figure that out. So anyway, pigeon business has become sort of a good reference for for just like, oh right, this is stupid stuff happening in court. So yeah, but I love the little pigeon business shirts there. I love the logo there. So
That's pretty good. I have pigeons. I don't know if you know that or not.
Watch
are
out for
they
chlamydia.
pets or are they for eating or what are they? What are they?
All of the above, let's say. They're more an
Take
emergency
that down there.
food supply than current food supply, but
Fair.
they're out there.
Gotcha.
I like them.
I mean, yeah, I know people who raise them both as pets, and I know people who raise them for eating, and you. Yeah, I didn't think you'd be, and I also was like, I don't know, can I ask Valhalla that? But because,
You can ask
but I
me
didn't
anything,
think
buddy.
you'd be, what is it? I didn't think you'd be sort of concerned about about that.
No.
Yeah, I've had some people sometimes when I mention like going hunting, I get people who are like, why could you do that? And it's like, because the
You ever
animal is
had
delicious.
venison? It's delicious. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was gonna say my stepdad has pigeons, like the barrel rolling pigeons.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you were sitting there, and I was like,
Yeah, I was. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. Yeah, no, my sorry, I had to go feed my cats real fast, but no, he has like the barrel rolling pigeons. So I guess there's different breeds of pigeons that do pigeon
There are.
things.
Some of
Carrier
them
pigeons.
are
Yeah.
rollers, some of them tumble, some of them are high flyers, some of them are barely get off the ground and do like backflips as they fly. There's a lot.
He likes to go to those pigeon conferences where people, have like the pigeons. They do like the competitions. It's a weird thing. I don't think it's weird actually. I think it's kind of interesting.
I think it's a really neat hobby. I'd like to fly them, but without getting too far off base. Back to the Karen Reed thing.
can Jamie swing by and pet one of your pigeons? Because again, she really, really wanted to pet a pigeon. I was like, she never seen a pigeon before. They are everywhere. They are the flying rats. So, but Jamie was, oh, it's so cute. Jamie is unique. Let's just say that.
The baby pigeons are cute though. Like when they're first born, you have like little babies.
Oh, they're ugly. They're so
I
ugly
think they're
when you're first born.
cute.
Oh,
That's what you say about ugly babies. If your friend has an ugly baby, you say, "Oh, it's such a cute baby."
It's true.
so
That is true.
cute. I can't star them, Baker.
No, that's because I'm running it, but it's just so you can. Julio says, Beb will say, "Hey, here, Chloe," to determine. Yeah, that's how she'll make establish chain of confidence. I strongly believe the red plastic in John's hoodie that was left by CPD on butcher paper for days is the missing crack piece from when she broke her tail light hitting his car. I strongly don't believe that. Because it's, again, there was that expert who said, yeah, there was some plastic. She couldn't determine that it was from the tail light. And again, that's like Laura says, how is the CV allowed to keep saying there was microscopic pieces of taillight in his sweatshirt without proof? Because she didn't find it. She said she shook it and there was something, but I don't think we'll ever find that missing piece. And that's I made a post this week with words matter with the dismissal of the feds because they said into the murder of John O'Keefe or the death of John O'Keefe. That's different than saying we are absolutely not looking at the MSP or the CPD or anything. But I thought about it when they talked about the Dighton cop because he says cracked taillight. A cracked taillight is something completely different, even though Brennan, special prosecutor, claims it means no one would describe Karen Reed's taillight in the state we have seen it in the trial as cracked.
No.
It was shattered or destroyed or broken. cracked
Missing.
that sliver that was missing in the middle. And if she bumped into the car, it would most likely be pushed into the tail light housing, and then when they cracked the rest of it, it fell out. That's what I'm just speculating.
I have to imagine that most of those pieces would have ended up in the housing, right? If you're impacting in reverse, the plastic breaks in, not out all over the lawn. And then actually, I heard, I was listening to Andrea Burkhart and Brother Council earlier today, and Andrea, if I understood her correctly, was either I believe she was pointing out that the officers that found specific pieces of the plastic isn't nearly as random as it should be. So to explain, I guess, right? Instead of this big chunk of 8 pieces being found randomly, it was all found by one officer. And then this big chunk was found by one, and this one was found by one. And I was pretty sure she said that was the case. She may have been speculating, and I apologize if I mischaracterized what she was saying, but I was pretty sure that's what she was saying. She said she would like to see some more analysis of who found what pieces and when. And I think that was a good point.
I mean, it depends. It's tough to say on that because it's like, how does it fall? Where does it land? Like all of that. But I'm just like, this everything about this case just keeps coming up with more things where it's like, this is weird. And for a whole bunch of things, you can sort of look at it. You can go, well,
Okay.
I can see a possible explanation for it. The other thing is that by the time you get to all of the weird things, it's like, now that's just odd, right? There's just too many weird things.
Mathematically, you would think that that's just an impossibility, right? For one officer to find 5 sequential pieces of plastic over the course of however long it was, 3 weeks or whatever. And then, like that I don't know how that happens, Ian. I mean, I think I know, but I don't know.
Everything about the case is weird. So that's the problem we're at.
Yeah, it's great content, but it's also infuriating content because you're going here and saying, how are we still here with all of this cray-cray going on? And as Jess pointed out, they went around with leaf blowers and shoveled the front lawn. Didn't find anything other than 4 small pieces, and then they find,
excuse me for a minute,
big pieces of the tail light intact, almost in the same place. How? At least the disturbance of the snow when they were digging out the stuff, or the snow blower, or when the snow melted, wouldn't it take and mix all of this? It's kind of weird that all of these pieces, which also is different sizes, would mean they would travel different directions or distances. And there's so much of this where you're just sitting and thinking, if you don't think about it, it makes perfect sense. The second you just start thinking about it, that's why when that guy was coming at you, I said, stop wasting your breath, because moving goalpost McGee will just find another thing and another thing. And they are always doing that where they never bring any evidence. They're just saying, you're wrong. But then prove to me how science doesn't work in Canton. But I don't think CERN has have another particle accelerator under Canton. I can't figure out how can you go on the stand and testify, this is the debris field, and then the defense says, well, the debris field actually started here. Does that change your opinion? No, it's the same. No, because that would move the impact zone and the distance the body traveled. Didn't you take science in school? It would change.
I mean, he clearly didn't.
What? No, he just had someone tell him what to say. But that's why we keep making all of these, because we could, as someone said, Lorax would be yelling about this case. I think all of us are deeply Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just an idiot who goes to court and says guilty or not guilty. But you get infuriated by the level of incompetence shown, or if it's not incompetence with this amount of mistakes, it can't be. The lying to the Commonwealth, the misuse of Commonwealth funds, and a witch hunt on a woman who, luckily enough, had a big set of brass and money enough to fight the state, because they just wanted her to take the plea deal. Give her a short sentence and then, out. We don't have to talk about it anymore. And that's because the justice for John O'Keefe will never happen, no matter if she's convicted or not convicted. He will never get justice because the police didn't do their job. And that's infuriating to me.
It is infuriating.
Because everyone is, well, Brian Albert did it. Prove it. You can't. There's no evidence that can do it. Colin did it. How will you prove it? There's no evidence in this case that's reliable. Not one piece of evidence is reliable.
And that's why I think it's so important too for just like the metadata. Because I do think, I mean, I think if they can disprove the Sally Port video, I mean, disprove it, like prove that it was altered, I think that's going to be a huge thing. But you're going to need the metadata. You're going to need to know the workflow that they did to do it. Because it's one thing to just say, oh, it's edited, because that's kind of arbitrary when you think about it. That's like kind of saying, oh, my car engine is broke, but not specifying what part of the engine is broke, or that a computer is malfunctioning, but not really specifically stating what's wrong with the computer. Is it the graphics card? Is it the motherboard? Like being very specific about it and being very specific about the method and knowing all of that data. So all the metadata in the files and really analyzing that, even if you don't have the original, analyzing that data with all the different variables, I think is super important.
Yeah, and it just shows again how important chain of custody is, because I've never seen it. We just had another trial where there was a guy who stabulated a woman because she had done some unspeakable things to her kid, allegedly. Probably not allegedly, but they found DNA under one of her fingernails, and we had the one who did the one who found the body, the one who did the test, the one who delivered the test to the lab, the one who opened the envelope, the one who did the test, the one who repackaged it, and the one who did the result. We had every single person in the chain, because that has been the big point in this case, is the DNA his. And they almost had the milkman driving past the house when they went in to do the test. It was so meticulously. And in this case, where was the evidence for 6 days? Yeah, it was laying on a table next to the evidence room. Or maybe it was in a car, or maybe it was...
Or in a paper file.
In a paper file, yeah, it's... What does all this mean for the civil trials he has against Paul O'Keefe? I don't know.
Isn't that Paul suing her as opposed to the other way around?
I don't know. She has a case, but because he's suing her for wrongful death, but and that's a totally different level of evidence needed to find her guilt. Think about the OJ case, because OJ isn't a convicted killer, but he is found guilty in a civil court that he caused the death of his wife. So it's different. It's not the same.
The burden of proof is much less in a civil suit than it is in a criminal trial.
It's just 50%. And I mean, they might be able, well, like 50% plus a hair. They might be able to get there on the civil standard, right? They might be. And
yeah, she took him there. She was drunk. Most likely she did it. Is probably what a civil jury will get to.
And that's the thing is, people are like, whatever. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I wasn't actually there. Like, I wasn't physically present. But I just know that I have serious problems with how do we get to proof beyond a reasonable doubt in this case. Yeah. And, as was said, how do you ever know what happened to prove it against anybody? We just don't. We don't have that. So.
And Christina Mavet says, we can all agree this is a corrupt persecution, not a prosecution. No, it's a prosector accusation. because
Prosector, special prosector brain.
Persecution.
just to because I said I would hold you for 90 minutes, and it's about that time. Runkle, how many spelling mistakes do you have in a typical filing?
I mean, I'm kind of anal. I try to make sure I don't have any, but that's not usual for lawyers. There are always spelling mistakes. So when I say I can't really fault some people, although I do say you should proofread your shit, right? Because you're filing
Especially
this
the
with
title
the court.
page. Like the very
Yeah.
cover page with 8 different spelling errors on it. Come on now.
How many
There's
times
spell,
did you?
I don't know.
there's spell check. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm super dyslexic. If you ever see my tweets, I have a lot of misspellings because I'm like typing fast and I mix words up. But that's why they have spell check. I mean, they don't really have spell check. I mean, I guess they do have, like the Surrey spell check. I never use it. Or the autocorrect is what really gets me into trouble. But I think that you could also just, there's Grammarly. Grammarly is good.
For $250,000, you better believe I'm going to spell my name right. That's all I've got to say about that.
We're use Grammarly.
You can say, well, the Brennan, it's some paralegal who typed it up for him.
Yeah.
Clearly.
It can slip through, but mentioning special prosector because they just copied the text, and I think it's 11 times in a row, special prosector, and then misspelling the police as police. I'm dyslexic as well, and this is my third language. And when I caught it, someone else should have caught it before I did it. And Stacy,
I don't know. I don't know. I just get worried about is it actually a condition? Is it because I don't know.
I'm of the opinion that someone doesn't like that he got that job and got that money, but that's just my theory. That's why they're treating him like this. Stacy LeBruno says the defense need to focus more on the element this case hinges on. Was O'Keefe hit by a car? They must show reasonable doubt on that element, explain to the jury why it's crucial. I agree. I think the third-party culprit defense needs to step back a bit, and the fact that science proves he wasn't hit by a car needs to be the most important part of the case. But again, it's Lally who made it about the third part because they never really did much about it in trial. But they kind of set the stage for all the Aruba crap and that. But I think it's correct.
Let me ask too, Runkle. Now that the federal case has resolved as far as the John O'Keefe death matter, there should be nothing preventing them telling the jury who ARCA is and why they're there, right? Or am I off base?
You'd think.
Okay.
I mean, I think, but I mean, they may say that it's prejudicial because they'll hear that then the feds were investigating. Even if the feds didn't find anything, they'll say it was prejudicial. So, we'll see.
I don't like it. And let me take an extra second because
I'm like,
Baker
you don't have to
deleted-
like it. It's just, it is what it is.
Right. Yeah. Because Baker deleted some of my super chats over here. DeOrk gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, DeOrk. And Wendy H says, Valhalla was a star last night with Recovery Addict. Love the Lego. And I appreciate it, Wendy. You're amazing. Thank you.
And Zach had one too.
The Zach one, I don't know if
yeah, that's just that's Zach. Love to hear your thoughts on the jury issue. I don't think there will be a jury issue because how can they prove they can't prove Fanning, even though they claimed he never stood in the courtroom with the jury. We know he was there. We know he was the one who told about the jury. I would say there should be a hearing to who told him about a juror and who knew a juror was sitting at some bar yelling about the case that he could bring into Bev. She'll never allow it. I don't think she'll ever do an evidentiary hearing on stuff like that. And again, it's infuriating, but it won't. You just have to lower your expectation of everything. I don't know if anyone else believes that it'll come to anything, but I don't think so.
I think in this case too, you always have to have low expectations because even when they were requesting the original files, I think I was the first one to say they're not going to have it. Like I think everybody was kind of wanting them to almost have it, just so you could like prove, oh look, there's an edited file. But I even said outside the gate, they're never going to produce it. It's not in their benefit to produce the original file. Do they have it? Do they not have it? Who really knows? But I don't think that having that original file is going to benefit them. And it kind of furthers, again, my theory or my methodology, I should say methodology of how the video was edited in the first place. Because if you have the original file, you can disprove that. But if you don't have the original file, you can basically
you can scream in the wind. It won't change anything. And
it's not going to change anything if you don't have the original. Yeah, basically.
And again, you'll have to get past the gatekeeper, and that's Bev.
Yeah. Just have low expectations.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to get into heaven past St. Peter than get anything unflattering. I have so low expectations. Brennan stated the excavator that wasn't at the scene, maybe to fill pool. I don't know what that was in connection to. I'm a little behind. I'm sorry. Nan said Hank was sweating down his neck and shaking. He should be for lying to the court, but I really don't think. Do you think it's because he's a defense lawyer because I think he's way too aggressive in his way of being a prosecutor. That he hasn't really taken the role on him. I don't know, but again, I don't. Brother counsel said I don't want to comment on other lawyers' work, so if you don't want to say anything, it's fine.
I don't know, right? I mean, different lawyers have different personalities, and trying to figure out why they've got a particular personality is probably a fool's errand. So
yeah, it's bunk science. We can speculate, but we'll never know.
Yeah, it's just guesses, right? So.
And even with with the video files too, like even I haven't really tried to debunk. I mean, I think there's visual elements in a lot of the MP4, so a lot of the Karen Reed, the Ring cameras, because those are a different format. But I think again, because they're playing proprietary formats and a proprietary player, I think that's more of something to go on. Because again, MP4s, they do have metadata, but it's going to be harder to prove than like something that's been like specifically played in a proprietary player when they're claiming they don't have the proprietary files, which again, if you don't have the proprietary files, you can't play it in the player. So I think just little elements like that, the devil is in the details, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And those details we will never, ever be able to dig into because everything has gone through the washing machine of being put into different hard drives, different players. So, and that's we will always be able to speculate, but we'll never be able to prove. The missing piece of taillight was never found at John's because Paul used a snowblower the day of John's death, as per the ring footage. That, and I think that by that, because she didn't slam into the car, she bumped into the car. So if it broke there, it'll most likely end up inside of the taillight housing, or fall off during the drive. That's what because I watched that video where she backs up again. Fact, she refused a hearing at the time over defense objections and dismissed the jury on hearsay of hearsay is a huge issue. What evidence was used? We'll never find out because it was a sidebar issue and we don't know what was said at sidebar, even though she then talks about sidebars.
But we'll find out eventually because those sidebars should be recorded.
Yeah.
Should be.
Yeah. And that's going to be a whole other mess to dig into at that time. What do you think about the thing that they absolutely can't say on what ground they are raising the objections?
I think they should be asking for a sidebar and everything.
Yeah, but
like okay.
But I'm more thinking about they can't say objection hearsay, objection this and that. They just have to say objection, and then she says sidebar. Normally they'll say objection hearsay, or they'll.
I would just be saying objection. I'm requesting a
Okay, you wouldn't
a sidebar.
That would force her then to make a decision on what the objection is, right? So at the moment, she can kind of get away with not addressing the objections. And then if it comes up as an issue later, she can make up whatever BS she wants. But if she's forced to go to a sidebar and put it on the record, what she believes is happening, then the appellate issues would be easier, I think, right, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be able to really appeal something if you don't actually have the grounds for it on the record, right? It's
Right.
like, well, why was this rejected? Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
So if you want to make an appeal record, you got to actually go in and argue the appeal, like argue the issue. And she's basically saying, well, you got to do that on everything. So time to do it on everything.
I think the law is like so fascinating because I mean, my video stuff seems complicated, but I feel like the law is like super complicated, Runkle. I really appreciate your perspective because I'm kind of like a kindergartner with this.
Oh, it's all just the law is complicated, but a lot of that is lawyers trying to make it complicated because that's what we do. So, yeah.
We needed Judge Darrow, who every time there'd been a sidebar, she would do a 2.5-hour lecture of why.
Oh, God, no. God, no.
I tried to watch that Vicene case she had, and every time she had an objection, she talked for 45 minutes. I had to leave. When you had Del Brooks there, he was taking his clothes off or building forts. You could kind of enjoy it, but when it was just a boring case, and she was sitting there, according to Rule 2526, and someone asked him, and she was so slow. I was just, nope.
I thought that was just a Daryl Brooks thing. Turns out, no, she's just like that all the time.
Yeah. And Christina McGrath says, I sincerely apologize if I misspoke. Did I misread the room? I respect your side a lot. Cheers. I don't know what you said, that we might have said something else, but we are not here to agree. We are here to agree to disagree on some points. Everyone have their opinion of the case, and as long as you are kind of nice to most of our guests,
you can be mean to me. It's okay.
Yeah, then everything is fine. Excellent guest. The Sunday panel show is working for you, Baker. Thank you, Crispy. And if I remember the juror interview correctly, the jury wasn't convinced he was hit. They thought defense didn't prove he was in the house and she was there and he was there. Yeah, that's what I gathered. She must have done something, and that's the big problem. She's in court.
And the one thing is, like, Turtle Boy asked, like, okay, so what about all the other people that were there? And he's like, well, she was the only person who was charged. And I'm like, oh, that is insane to me. It was nuts. Where you're like, well, she's the only one who's charged, so she must have done it. Like, that is a total inversion on the, of the burden of proof. So,
and that's why I always say the instant you step into a court, because everyone's saying, oh, I would just go to court. You are at most at 75% guilty already, because the state wouldn't charge you if you didn't do something wrong, right? That's how normal people think, because the police are the good guys. Not always.
To be that way.
Thank you, Wicked. And Wicked, again, I wondered who coined the term distractor that the jury was using to describe evidence the defense presented. The cop. I bet it was the cop who was the head of the jury.
Fanning or whatever.
No, not Fanning.
Not Fanning.
The one who was in the room.
The juror.
Oh, got it.
Can you please review the tow truck footage real quick? Boozy Beauty is just discovered the Y is hanging below the timestamp at the top. Abby! That's for Abby to do, because that's something she needs to, because I can't pull it up and she can do magic with it or anything, so she will have to do it. But I have already gone longer than I asked my guests to and I hope you all had a great time, because I love having these people on, making me smarter, making you smarter, and discussing various subjects, because I like that we're not all seeing the same thing, because we have different opinions and different backgrounds. But as I always do, I'll give you the room so you can promote yourself a little bit. Abby, one of the questions many have asked is, do you have a channel?
I do have a channel. So my channel is on YouTube. It's at CT Video Jesus. So just put in at CT Video Jesus. You should find me right there. And I'm also on Twitter. You can just search for me for the hashtag Video Jesus, and I'll come right up. I'll also put that in the comments too, at both channels.
Anything coming up people should be looking for?
Yes, I'm supposed to be on a podcast tonight with Dixie Normus, and that is going to be at 7 p.m. So look for me there.
Could you
And that's
please
for the
repeat
Chronicle
that name?
podcast. It's going to be Dixie Normus is for the Chronicle.
I'm sorry, I'm childish.
Why are you picking on the new guest, Baker?
I'll put the link in the chat. So it's Dixie Normus. He has he's local to Canton. He has a podcast, The Chronicle. So I'll be on there tonight at 7 p.m. I'll be on there with Lacey Jane too.
I have one of my moderators who run my show. If I can't do it, Marissa, someone sent in a super chat asking about his cousin Dixie Normus, and she was like, she read it and then she did, and I just wrote her, welcome to YouTube.
I literally didn't know like what his Twitter handle was, and I was like, oh my god, that's so clever. You get it if you read it. I won't read it on your thing, but it's kind of funny. I like it.
It's good.
It's got style. It's artistic.
Mr. Ian Runkle.
I'm on at Runkle of the Bailey. I'm talking about all sorts of things. A lot of Karen Reed because that's what's sort of going on right now. But I've got videos coming out on the latest Janet craziness, on the latest G-Wax craziness, on all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's check it out. Runkle of the Bailey on YouTube.
Great content, by the way, Ian. I am Valhalla Awaits, y'all. I have goats, and that makes me cool. So subscribe. That's all I got.
No, that makes the goats cool. You're just cool.
Yeah. You hang out with cool
No
goats.
lies detected.
It's I love that we can do these Sunday shows and that we can get different people on because we all see different aspects, and it makes it interesting to meet new people like Abby or get to greet old friends again. And Valhalla is here. Please go show all of them some love and have a wonderful Sunday. Remember to go and check out Dixie Normus, where Video Jesus will be on later. And I just need to say, amazing panel. Thank you, Baker, Runkle, Abby, and Valhalla. This was awesome. All of you were awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Do all the YouTube things that everyone tells you what to do. I don't like to do that. But see you when new craziness appears in this case, because it's been crazy so far, and I'm feeling like the roller coaster is just about to crest and go down really fast, because Bev is a wonderful woman.
I could say when I first got into this, I never thought I would ever be on, because I am not a content creator. I never thought that I would ever be on a podcast talking about debunking a video. But this is how crazy this case is. As you see, and you're just like, I can't stand by it. Like, I need to figure it out. But it's been fun. I mean, at least it's been interesting.
Yeah, and as Ian said, it's just bizarre. And you're sitting here thinking, no. I did a video the other day because I normally do like a recap and say, well, this happened. I did 5 takes because I don't do scripts. I can't do scripts because my mind is just, the squirrel starts chasing each other. And I ended up doing a video saying, sorry, this will be a rant because I tried 5 times and I just end up screaming. I just can't have a special pro sector Brennan anymore. I wanted to this. Of course, I remember this on the end. I was thinking that the defense gave them the perfect out the other day. Let's throw Proctor under the bus, drop the case, and say, well, we can't because he messed up everything by keeping the video files, and we can't prove anything. It would have been the easy out. And the defense gave it to them. They didn't go hard at everything and everyone. They only pointed at Proctor. And I thought, that's actually quite clever. If the state wants an out where they can keep their face clean and say, yeah, we still think she did it, but we just can't take this to court because it's so contaminated by Proctor. But he's fired because he's an a-hole. It would have been the perfect out for the state as well. Both of them would come out of it clean. Karen Reed in a lot of debt, but still. But then they go,
They go and show more videos. They should have just stopped at the revisions. Just don't make revisions. Don't edit it.
Yeah.
Like
I think that was their
Bettero's, like Bettero's been saying since the beginning, this court system up there is just zombies. They're just going to keep chugging along no matter what. And he's been spot on thus far.
And the thing is keep in mind, a lot of them think they're in the right? I'm sure they're
right.
And so, like, the most dangerous person isn't somebody who thinks that they are full of crap. It's somebody who thinks that they are, because I'm sure many of them think, like, hey, we think Karen Reed is guilty. And so they're not going to stop because that's their view, right? And so be aware of that too, right? They're not going to give up. They're thinking because they're thinking, oh, well, this is just a very flawed police investigation, but we really need to make sure that the guilty get punished. And it's like, is it though? Or is there, like, I don't know. And this is the problem, is I don't know if Karen Reed did it. I don't know if, somebody else did it. It's such a bad case. Why is this case still a thing?
You have to always put in the 2% for magic. Even in my methodology, I'm 98% sure it's either method A or method B, but I'm gonna leave 2% for magic.
It's the gnomes.
It's
the gnomes doing
I
it.
said it the other day. A person can do some absolutely horrible things if they feel like they're in the right when they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'd learned that lesson in the 40s.
Well, and you look at a lot of wrongful conviction cases, and a ton of them are they decided who they think did it, and they just are completely unwilling to consider any other possibilities. And once they've made that decision, even as other evidence comes up, they just disregard it, or they hide it, or, because, you get cases where they're like, we're really sure this guy did it, and then here's this evidence that points away from them. So we've got to hide that because if that comes out, then the guilty person might walk. And that's kind of the way people think. It's this like badly, sort of problematic issue. But it's just like, this is the kind of thing that comes up in wrongful conviction after wrongful conviction is, people think they're doing the right thing. They think that they are justified. They think they're righteous. And it leads them to situations that after the fact look completely messed up. So, I mean, I think it's important to remember that a lot of the people here will be people who think that they are, on the side of the angels. And, they don't view themselves as villains.
Neither
That's
does Al
the big
Qaeda.
Yeah, but that's the problem, because we're right, and the way people are getting involved in this at this time, especially from the as I call them, the short bus Smurfs, they just attack. They don't care about anything. And Cop's daughter, no, I never think anyone is guilty at first. I always believe that anyone is innocent until proven guilty. I don't swing. I'm very often, even with the most horrible cases I covered, I for one didn't believe they proved that Adam Montgomery did to his daughter what he was found guilty of. I believe she passed away in his car, and I still think that an accidental OD was more likely. But I uphold the standard that they must prove to me guilt. And I don't go in there and say, well, it must be, she must be guilty. I saw the famous arm picture, and I said, Jamie, we need to look at this. And since then we have been, what the hell is going on? That's but that's how it is. Now people, it's been almost 2 hours, and I said 90 minutes. I'm a bad
You're a
host.
liar.
I blame Valhalla.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna hit the leave button, and then you're
Yeah.
it'll be all good. Good night, everybody.
Runkle, thank
Good
you so
night,
much for
Ian.
joining us.
Cheers.
Appreciate
Thank you so
you.
much for having me. So, cheers.
Bye. And
Thank you for having me.
Deshane, this trial just reminds me of the West Memphis 3. I don't know what that case is, but now I'm hitting the outro. Bye.
What exhibit are you referring to?
I'm going to make this 100, Your Honor.
All right.
100.
100.
Because it is 100%
100%.
correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
So you literally built a cannon?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
All right, I'm in love.
Go back. Please do that again. Oh, that was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
While I'm waiting for this, did you, whether it's true or not, believe that Mr. Randolph had slept with your wife?
I wouldn't care.
You wouldn't have cared?
No,
Did you believe he had slept with your wife?
no,
Did you believe he slept with your mother-in-law?
probably did. Everybody has.
So there.
Everybody has.